college is unnecessary for a career in reality capture. I will pause and say,
Ellis Malmgren interviews Matthew Byrd.
when I go back to what I thought about school while going through it, I didn't like it. If you don't know why you're doing something or why it's important, you're not going to be bought in to do it. In high school, I got to go travel and tour with a band.
Does knowing the old ways of documenting the world enhance learning the new ways?
It really is this idea of sharing time, sharing resources, sharing efforts in order to solve problems for the whole industry. Like I stated before I said anything, this is my opinion. I could be wrong. You're literally saving people's lives, and that's not an exaggeration. We're back.
Indeed. So we're not going to get as wide-ranging maybe as our first chat, but I do want to prime you for what will be a theme of sorts, which is education.
Cool.
And learning. That's going to be the formal sense, the reality capture sense, industry, entrepreneurship, the life sense, what have you. So looking back, how would you regard, and this is a sort of continuation from where we left off with your life story, but on your education, specifically schooling years, learning,
Yeah.
how do you regard it growing up?
Ooh. Well, not everybody knows my school story, but I was homeschooled.
Okay.
Most of my childhood. I went to kindergarten, public school kindergarten. It was hardcore. I even growing up being homeschooled, there were parts of it where I was like, man, I kind of wish I was going to public school. There are times, and everybody asks, like, did you have friends? Did you ever leave your home? Were you locked in your, there's actually a lot of opportunity for still, social activities. Even back to part of my story, right? In high school, end of high school, I got to go travel and tour with a band where other kids, have to sit in a class for 8 hours a day. And I think one of the other benefits that I've seen with homeschooling is you really are learning at your pace, and the topics you're interested in, you can dive deeper into. So I guess that's one note that not everybody knew about me. But when I go back to what I thought about school while going through it, I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I did not enjoy school. And I think this goes back to part of my story as well. I didn't really have a career goal. So I wasn't going through school thinking I'm going to really want to know how to do math really well because I'm planning to XYZ, or, I didn't really care about learning about science a ton. I wasn't planning to go into medical, because I didn't have an end goal or a reason to learn all these things. To me, school was just it feels like you're just wasting time, honestly. Going through school, that's how I felt. I was like, I can't even remember what I did from classes last year. So if I go through another class this year, I feel like I'm going to lose so much information. I'm learning things that I didn't feel were relevant to. So I wouldn't say I was the best student. I wasn't fully bought in. I did the minimum of what I needed to do. But again, my passion was in sports and in gaming and in music. So digging into science or digging into math it was not really of interest to me.
Looking back, do you think that was because of the subjects themselves, or perhaps maybe the curriculum, how it was being taught? Educators,
I think it could be both. And even though I was I was homeschooled, there were, co-ops and groups and things. We went to classes. And so, I had opportunities. I don't think it was necessarily the way things were taught. I think it was just that, mentally, if you don't know why you're doing something or why it's important, you're not going to be bought into to do it, right? If you're not bought into being fit, well, then you're never going to get consistent to going to the gym because you're spending a ton of time. It's hard work. It's heavy lifting. So if you don't care enough for the result for a specific reason, then you don't want to put in all that work. So for me with school, so many of those topics, I'm like, why do I need to know about the history of some other country? there's certain things that just didn't click with my mind as to like why it's important, what's relevant. It has nothing to do with me being better at sports or music, so I think parts of school I felt like were a waste of time. Getting out of high school, right? All of those years, I went straight to work. I did not go to college. Same reason. Like, I loved the idea of maybe going to college to take some specific classes, but just the idea of general education again, of like, you have to take all the subjects again. I'm like, that we already did that for years. Like, I just want to go in and learn business, or I want to learn CAD, or I want to, like, at that point, I just wasn't really interested in starting over and doing all those basic things. And that was my view. That was my view coming out of it. I obviously told a little bit of my story getting into work and then building a company. And, you know, I look at where I'm at now and I'm like, I've not needed further education in order to build a company, or so I still look back at school at saying, like, I think there is a lot of it that feels like wasteful time. And I do think that there are a lot of people that maybe go to college that don't have a goal, don't know why. And is there positive that comes out of just going to college? I'm sure, yes. Like, the responsibilities that you're building and the relationships you're building and the ability to study and, you know, tests and, but I still don't think that most people should just go to college. Like, to me, if anybody I get asked all the time, like, from parents that have kids that are, you know, trying to figure out what to do. I'm like, if I were to recommend, like, people getting out of high school, if you don't already know the career path you're wanting to go down, I would skip a little bit of time and maybe find some internships and try some things out. Like, go get a couple different jobs, understand different industries, and figure out maybe the path you want to do, so that going into college, there's a little more direction. Because most kids just bounce around subjects and change majors, and then they spend all this money and time and get a degree in something that they don't actually even end up using. They totally change industries. I don't know. So those are a few thoughts around formal education for me.
Absolutely.
I think it's important, but I think you should know why you're doing it.
Okay. So segueing off of that, fill in the blank here, if you'd be so kind. College is blank for a career in reality capture.
College is, I don't know if there's a blanket statement for it.
Sounds like you probably wouldn't say necessary.
I would say, yeah. So today, college is unnecessary for reality capture, for a career in reality capture. I will pause and say there are universities and there are certain courses or classes that are working toward further education around reality capture, around BIM and VDC. And so if you were to go for those reasons, to learn about design, learn about construction management, get your feet wet in some of those technologies, there are some schools that have things to add there. The other angle could still be, if you're getting education around architecture, around engineering, around surveying and geomatics, those are related and they're in the industry. And I think there's still important things that can be learned from those. But today, there's not a bunch of people coming out of college that are ready to step in as a leader in a reality capture role. So as it stands right now, most education is self-taught, on the job, like companies just stumbling through learning themselves. A lot of the people going into college that even are looking at those different options of, like, I don't know what I want to do yet. I'm looking at architecture and design, and I'm looking at construction. They don't really even know all the technologies that exist or the opportunities that could come with them. I actually just sat down this week with some college professors that work around construction management. They're even asking the questions like, why do companies, like, we're trying to enhance our program and we're looking at these different technologies and we want to build more around this, but like we're trying to understand it. We're trying to learn what companies need and what are the opportunities that are really growing and where will things be going over the next several years, so we know what we should be building curriculum around. And so it's in that phase that the professionals and the companies are adopting it a lot faster than the general public even knows about. Mm-hmm. And even the educators don't really understand all the opportunities that exist around the technologies yet. They do see it as a tool. I see it as an entire career path because of what happened with me and what I see with other companies where there's massive opportunity for just even becoming a technical expert with the tools. But nobody's producing that right now.
So safe to say you're optimistic about the growth and potential of the industry.
Massively.
Of course. Are you as optimistic about the educational foray into it and the adoption that perhaps in the coming years we will see a much greater increase in curriculum and programs? Would you say you're as optimistic in that realm?
Yes, but I don't think it's all of that takes a long time. Mm-hmm. For it to become general, material for all the universities to understand the technologies and find. One of the problems, again, talking with a couple different professors, even from different universities, they're like, "We're interested, we see this, but like, who's going to come in and help build the curriculum? Who's going to be the adjunct professor to teach the students?" There's the only people available that really have that understanding are deep in jobs. And so I think it's going to take years and years of time for the education opportunities to catch up to the industry demand.
That's true. You think computer science, right? Like 90s, like it sort of took that massive explosion and then people
Yeah. So we, RCN, and our community of professionals that are already in these and using these, and we are way ahead of the curve of the growth that's coming, which is why we keep talking about we've barely started. There's a lot of growth ahead. The next several years, the adoption is going to grow. Everybody's going to be wanting this on job sites. There's not enough professionals. So I think that we can help influence the education system starting to pull it in. We can try to connect professionals that maybe can help build curriculum. Our committees that we can talk about too. That's some of the goals. We're trying to fill those gaps is what are some short-term things that we can help provide, cultivate, train, where we see gaps that no one else is really filling yet.
Yeah, we'll definitely tackle the committees. It's going to be a focal point. But one more thing, just to kind of dive more deeply into the topic of education and reality capture, are there specific reality capture technologies that you would say are more apt for collegiate study? Things that for whatever reason, this is a better fit than others? And if so, why?
So you're asking if out of all the technologies, if there's specific ones
Sure,
that
everything from laser scanning to the software side and in between. That maybe for those out there thinking about it, that perhaps, okay, maybe this is more worthy of a pursuit than interest.
Yeah, see, that's hard to answer because there's need for all of them. Mm-hmm. And these are literally the same questions the professors and the managers at the university are sitting asking me at lunch last week are like, okay, tell me the 5, what are the biggest pain points? Which technologies? We know, and there's photogrammetry, there's LiDAR, there's the BIM piece, but then there's the scan data into the models. And then people want to know how to take that and create digital twins. And then they're trying to figure out AR, VR technologies for simulation. There are so many technologies. It's hard to point and say one. And that's part of the struggle is that so many of these people are trying to utilize multiple, but nobody's helping fill that gap of how to even use the ecosystem of tools and how they relate to each other. I guess just in basic though, like building the understanding of the different capture devices. We don't have to get down to just one device, but even the awareness of here's why these capture devices are important and how they get used. Otherwise, yeah, you'd have to go deep into every single one, because when you get into the technical workflows and the way they get applied and the processes, it's very different across different devices. So I couldn't point out one and say this one should be what educators are pulling in. To me, it's important. To me, it's important to try to hit as many as possible so that they understand the differences between them and the reasons they may use one type versus the other, as opposed to just pick one and run with it.
Gotcha. What are the RCN committees, and what was their inception?
So the RCN committees, we started really digging deep and working on the back end idea for about the last year. We launched them at our conference last year. And the whole focus of the committees is it is a community-driven initiative where professionals from the industry that see these similar pain points, want to solve some of these similar problems, we are creating a community of committees where they can all meet together. It's not just us driving the decision-making and the goals and the deliverables. It is, hey, we see all of you have these same problems. You all want to work toward this. We're going to cultivate these committees where you can come together, talk about the common pain points, identify things to work towards, such as case studies. Everybody's asking for case study material of like, how does laser scanning help a construction project? Well, instead of everybody having to go do their own case study, let's work together and collaborate on a case study, write that together, share examples, write one report, and now everybody in the industry can find that report to use to help with educating their clients and educating their company. So it really is this idea of sharing time, sharing resources, sharing efforts in order to solve problems for the whole industry. And the way the committees work, we have maybe 12 or 15 committees we plan to launch. They're all going very deep into one technology or solution lane. So the very first one, based on popular demand, was the LiDAR and laser scanning committee. The next one will be the digital twin committee and the BIM VDC committee, and then the drones and payloads committee. So we're separating out entire groups of people that's their specialty. That's what they're interested in solving problems around. That's what they're trying to learn more about. So every time that committee meets, we'll start with that laser scanning and LiDAR committee. Every time they meet, the whole focus is around those tools and solutions. What scanners exist? What are the differences between the different types of scanning technology? How do we build guidelines that help companies know what tool should be used for what type of job? So when we get to writing case studies and white papers, it'll all be around that. When we get to the digital twin committee or the drone committee, it'll be the same thing. Those people are not wasting their time talking about different laser scanners. They're talking about what is digital twin, or what are UAVs and what kind of sensors go on UAVs, and what are the challenges with different types of, fixed wing or putting devices on multi-rotor. There's so much to dive into around each technology and solution. We think it's important that we have each of those dive deep into their lane. But then the other key thing is that those committees will collaborate on projects too. I see that as one big gap in the industry, where there might be individual organizations out there that do go deep into one solution or one technology. But again, companies aren't only looking for one technology or solution. They're looking to implement a whole suite of these technologies and ecosystems of how do I integrate control and traditional survey work and fly a site with a drone and use a scanner for the building and tie all of that into data for a model that I can then take into simulation and, gamificate. It's this whole ecosystem And so the only way to help, build guidelines and material that help people learn how to do all of it is to have each of them dive deep into their lane and then make those collaborate and say, okay, all the individual committees wrote their paper on, best practices. Now let's bring those committees together and say, how do we build out guidelines to integrate them? What is the relationship between scanners and drones and digital twins, and how do they work together? And I think that we are going to far surpass what any other educational path or individual organization or committee is going to do in terms of helping the adoption of the whole ecosystem for companies. Because as soon as they figure out the scanner piece, well, they still have all these things to struggle through. As soon as they figure out the drone piece, they still have all these things to struggle through.
Yeah.
So I truly think that once all of those committees are launched and running and helping solve problems and working together and collaborating, it will solve a lot of the mystery and unknown, and where companies are, as soon as they say, I'm interested in that technology, how do I get started? Everyone's like, well, go buy a scanner, I guess. Or, there's nowhere to point people to learn.
Sure.
So the goal is that we start solving some of that problem.
Tremendous. It reminds me almost of it's like open source reality capture in a sense.
Yeah.
Of this communal aspect. And when it all coalesces, and then it's almost like the sum being greater than
Yes.
parts,
Yep.
Excellent. So what determines, if you could share your process, if a field or domain gets a committee or a practice?
So
you have a large network. I mean, is it just testing waters with conversation, or?
Yeah. To me, when I originally laid out this idea, it was all of the technologies that I see as growing and impactful in built environment projects. So it really is testing the waters. It is like, look, we see enough going on around scanners, it needs its own. We see enough growth and desire around drone activities, it needs its own. So it really was identifying what are all the emerging technologies that we see growth in right now, we see companies asking questions about, we see companies successfully using, yet they have a lack of awareness or a lack of education around them. It was really just kind of brainstorming that and coming up with what is that ecosystem of technologies. We have said, you never know how building something like this is going to go. I'm a big fan of you think that you have a problem you can solve. You have the means to do it. We have the community to do it. People want to get involved. I think it's worth trying it. And if it starts to be successful, then you keep it going and you fuel it. And that's what's happening now. I mean, we've had over 200 professionals apply to be a part of these committees. That is 200 innovation leaders, CEOs, product owners, from all kinds of massive companies saying, we want to volunteer our time because we believe in the mission and we have those pain points. That is very quickly validating the need for it and what we're trying to solve. Now, the very first committee was the most voted for one, which is laser scanning and LiDAR. We had a lot of people also vote for digital twin and BIM and UAV and survey. There were a couple of the initial tech solutions that we listed as potential committees that had lower votes. So our initial goal is, okay, our efforts are going to go in toward the most voted for or suggested one within the community, because though we believe it's important, we're also trying to fulfill and solve the problems that the people in our community are saying that's actually our biggest problem, which is, again, where we're not going to only be the ones driving this. I may have come up with the idea, and we may facilitate the administration of getting it launched, but now that people are volunteering and running that, we had 3 leaders selected from within the community to run that laser scanning committee. So it is run by leaders in the community, not by us. It is run by them with members from the community. It is very community driven. Even the way that a committee starts working toward the problems they want to solve is based on there were a couple big brainstorming sessions that all the members were voting for different things, listing out problems, and we started pulling those in, and then people could vote on them. So we really identified like what are the biggest pain points across all of these companies and what are the ones people want to work towards solving. And that's how we start to determine individual projects within that committee.
Excellent. Who can join these committees and what is the leadership structure? Is it going to be consistent throughout all the ones to come? Will it vary?
Yeah. Right now, it should remain the same across all committees. We have a chair and 2 co-chairs per committee. So there's one person that ultimately is responsible and kind of helping run the committee, and there are 2 co-leaders alongside, because we also know that in a situation like this with these committees that it's volunteer and people have jobs. So we try to make it a low lift, like low commitment. We want people to share responsibilities. So we ended up with 3 leaders per committee. And in order to become a leader, you have to understand all the requirements. You have to understand what's being asked of you. You're committing to running this bi-weekly meeting for a year. And you don't have to be the technical expert, but you have to be able to help pull together those members and organize and work toward, setting up project teams. And so it really is like a project manager for that committee. And we let the leaders that apply, we have a leadership application process, and then we let all of the leader applicants vote among themselves. And then we had the 3 highest voted for people get nominated and become those leaders. So even the selection of the leaders for the committees is driven by who the applicants are and them voting for each other.
It's democratic, really. It's what it sounds like. Yeah.
And, yes, we have some level of expertise of knowing the technology, understanding some of the goals of these committees. So we're still very involved in trying to help guide and give advice and be involved or solve problems. And, if we get to a committee that unfortunately maybe we don't have the right leaders applying, or there's not enough, or we really feel like for some reason that the applicants are not qualified to run that committee, then we just won't launch that committee yet. Like we have some back-end requirements that we've saying like, we need to have at least 10 members and, 3 leaders, and in order for those committees to be effective. Which right now we're far surpassing that. The laser scanning committee has over 100 people that have applied with interest for membership involvement.
Wow.
And the bi-weekly meetings have had anywhere from 30 to 50 people every single meeting. That's a lot of people showing up to
for sure
want to help, to give advice, to break out and do smaller projects together. And I'm sure that there will be some of the other committees that maybe don't get that level of interest. And so again, we're kind of rolling them out in a phased approach of let's get the one up and running. Let's solve some of the workflow problems and the structure, since this is brand new. And as soon as it is stable and running and rolling, we're going to move on to the next most voted for committee and start that whole process over. Leadership applicants, helping build the roadmap, that whole process.
Outstanding. So laser scanning's up and running.
Yes.
We've got, the Archon conference coming at warp speed, but is there at least sliver of hope that by the end of the year, say, perhaps another committee, whether it's digital twin, UAVs?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, my assumption right now, and a lot of this, it's really based on it, not just a date, but like, again, a time frame, a feeling of, is that committee up and running enough that we can move on to the next one? So we're figuring it out together. I do expect the next committee will be rolling out by the end of the year, and the next one is the digital twin committee.
Sweet.
We also at the conference this year will have a RCN Committees update and panel conversation with the leaders from the first committee. We're going to be talking about the process of how it's gone and what's rolling out and some of the biggest voted for projects. So we'll really give kind of a deep dive and update there on committees in whole. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be an ongoing process. I've told everybody involved and those asking about it, this is a slow start to a massive movement, really. These committees are going to be making a big impact in the industry, but they also take time to get up and going. Like, it's like starting a university, right? Like, okay, you have to get like one class at a time figured out. And then you got to find the professor for that class that has that expertise, and you need to build a plan around it. And it's like, okay, we can only do that for one committee at a time. There's a lot that goes into it, but over the next year and 2 years and 3 years and as each of these committees is up and running, we have active members working toward problems. We're going to be producing so much content and education and guidelines. And ultimately, the hope is that we build toward training material and certification processes for certain technologies that don't exist now. One problem in the industry with not having some type of certification or training or standards or things like that, nobody knows experience levels of anybody.
Yep.
So a client can go, I need to hire a laser scanning company to come solve this problem. You have no idea how qualified they are. You don't know if they just bought their first scanner and don't really know what they're doing, or if they're an expert, or there's no structure around that. And it's caused problems because people take on jobs they didn't know how to do, or they're too big, or they didn't have that industry experience. And so getting to the point that there is some level of training and certification, so we could say, look, if you don't know how to scan yet, you can come take a 3-day boot camp workshop with experts who built a curriculum for this, and you can graduate at the end of it saying you're a certified level 1 laser scanning technician. You understand the different types of scanners. You understand when control is important. You understand the different file types. Like you're ready to go step into a scanning technician job. We can help turn those type of people around really quick, as opposed to it's going to take a long time for that to become an option in a university. Mm-hmm. Because even in a university, they have parts of a class that introduce you to a scanner, not get deep into the weeds and all the training and all the it's a little part of a construction management class or a survey class or so I do believe that these committees can solve problems that will not be solved, at least not in the near future, by any other organization.
Mm-hmm. So zooming out a bit, wider lens than even RCN committees, what is your own most, we'll say, cherished lesson in reality capture in your career?
Oh, my most cherished lesson in reality capture.
It could be from a person, a story, could be a failure, roaring success.
Yeah, that's really hard to pinpoint one thing. I've had some incredible opportunities. To me, honestly, I think it is. I can't say there's one exact thing, but what comes to mind to answer that question is truly the impact that it has across different industry types. Mm-hmm. I have worked on, shootings where people were killed, and thinking about the impact that technologies can have in documenting things, horrific crimes or accidents, or to actually help solve problems or bring justice to a situation, like thinking about those bigger things, working on buildings that had collapsed. To me, I think all the uses are important. I've just seen such a variety of types of uses that there's a much deeper passion for these technologies than just it helps my construction project a little bit. Like, yes, that's important, but I see it having the potential to impact so many different things that are much deeper than just saves you a little bit of money. And even to the work of working in refineries and facilities and nuclear facilities and dangerous environments. The technology actually helps save lives because those are very dangerous environments. The accidents happen, and the scanning and the virtual documentation to then keep people out of the facility, but they get to visit it virtually, it is safer. And it's easy when you talk about the benefits of reality capture to easily just throw those things out there. It's faster, it's cheaper, it saves you money, it improves safety. But if you actually dig into the deep impact of what that really is in certain industries, I mean, it keeps surveyors out of the middle of the road. People die all the time.
Absolutely.
From getting hit by cars. So yes, is it faster, cheaper, safer? Yes. Okay, but dig really deep into what those actually mean. You're literally saving people's lives, and that's not an exaggeration. So, So to me, it's really understanding that. I don't even remember your question, but that's what I'm passionate about, is the true impact of these technologies.
You answered it wonderfully. It was your most cherished lesson, and it sounds like it is that. It's the versatility of it and the fact that it does more than help on a budget. It affects people's welfare positively and saves lives.
Yep. And I see the long road. I see 20, 30, 40 years down the road what these technologies can impact. The idea of digital twins and smart cities and live sensors and analyzing data before something happens and predictive analytics, and it becomes such a bigger part of maintaining infrastructure and building and enhancing, which ultimately is improving our communities. It's improving the world. That's kind of a big deal. So seeing that vision and realizing, oh, we're like in the big baby steps of this, and we have the ability to help outline a vision, draw some of that. I use this quote all the time, which it's attributed to multiple people. I always say Abraham Lincoln, but the best way to predict the future is to create it. So if we, some other innovators can see that future and the potential of what these tools could do by the time we integrate them and map all these things and create digital twins and integrate sensors, and AI is able to use that data to create predictions. Like, if we can see that that's a possibility down the road, the only way it's going to happen is if people do it. It doesn't do it by itself.
Right.
So it takes innovators, it takes visionary people to outline these ideas and these visions and say, I can't build it, but I have the community for it. I have the vision for it. I know the technologies that need to work together. So ultimately, everything I'm doing is like, there are short-term successes that can be had in integrating scanning on a construction job site and saving money, but also it's building the awareness and the community and the capabilities to implement much bigger projects and plans for the future.
So off of the future, we've talked a lot about both learning and youth, right? Does knowing the old ways of documenting the world enhance learning the new ways?
That's a good question. I think there's a certain amount of that. And again, this is just my perspective or opinion.
Sure.
I'll be honest and say that in many areas of education, life, learning, personally, how I learn, what I care about, I don't always find as much value in understanding all the old ways. I think there's certain parts of it maybe, but I'm also a big fan of, like, if that's not how it's done now, then like maybe lessen how much of a focus there and focus on the now. I'll use one example, which I'm sure a lot of people will completely disagree with me.
Great.
Something simple. Math.
Okay.
I think that the amount of focus on knowing all the handwritten ways to do all kinds of complex math,
theorems and proofs,
to me, it's like, that's like, we have calculators and computers that give us answers that we need. Why spend so much time on learning to do things in a way that you may just never actually need to do them that way? Like,
Mm.
so I think that there's certain parts like understanding the fundamentals of how it works, or the formulas you need to know how to do to come out with your equation, but like compress that and then teach how to do that with the calculators and with the computer, or to use AI, or to use, because that's what is there. That's what's in our pocket. When was the last time you sat and did a complex math problem by hand?
Years and years with some more years.
I don't even know how anymore. So why still teach our kids how to do it? The same way that we know as soon as they're in the real world, they're never going to do it by hand. I don't know. There's certain things in education that I look at that and I go, I feel like we need to compress some of the things that are the old ways that, yes, let's teach on it, but then let's jump into the current. How do we do things now? What technologies are available? Don't ban people from using tech, like teach them how to use it properly. And then it gives you more time, more brain power, more capacity to go even further, to learn other things, to create new things. I don't know. That's kind of my general thought.
So this might loosely tie into that, but would you say there's any risk of AI making us worse at learning?
Do I think there's any risk in AI making us worse at learning? Yes.
Okay.
I think it's possible.
Because I asked that, you hear occasionally, I think, some studies where it's the process of, I think with language learning, right? They say that there's brain rewiring, that there's some enhancement of other cognitive capabilities, and it makes sense. So I'm thinking of that notion of learning and the process of it, and how AI might affect it.
Yeah, and that's where, like I stated before I said anything, this is my opinion. I could be wrong. Have I done all the studies, psychological and the hands and the learning and the right? Like, no. This is me thinking like, what have I learned? What have I kept using? What do I wish I had learned more of? It's really thinking of that.
Yep.
I do think that technology and AI in general can be a hindrance, right? Because if someone always does the work for you, you're never going to learn how to do it, whatever it is. So I think there's a certain amount of value that comes from you doing the work. I mean, let's use copywriting as an example. Mr. Ellis, our senior copywriter. Like, there are people today just saying, like, I don't need to write anymore because ChatGPT is amazing. It'll spit out a whole blog. Okay. Well, technology is also not human. It does not give you the human element. It gives you information sometimes that's not accurate. You can see so many people using it now that everyone's writing looks the same.
Exactly.
You don't get the thought process of why would you want to write something a certain way? Like, so again, I look at all of the things as a tool. Does AI writing replace a copywriter? No. Can it be a tool that for certain types of writing, even a copywriter uses? Yes. Are there certain companies that could use it to enhance? They're doing nothing now. Can it be a starting point for things? Yeah. But if you're a writer and you start only having AI write, you're going to lose your creativity. You're going to lose your ability to be a good writer. You're going to use your unique angle and voice. Like, so again, yeah, I think the technology can be a hindrance if you rely on it fully, for sure. And that becomes that question of, depending on what we're talking about, depending on the skill set or the knowledge or the what it is that it would replace. Like, I'll go back to math for me because I'm terrible at doing math by hand. Like, I have lost the ability to do complex math by hand. Don't know how.
Same.
The only reason that really I feel like would matter is if all computers died. I'd be screwed. I could never solve math problems. I don't know. So you have to pick and choose what's important to you. What skill set are you trying to really hone in on? what one are you okay with letting technology become your crutch for?
Yeah.
To me, I'm okay with technology, calculators, phone, AI, replacing my ability to do complex math. As long as I know when I need math and I know what to ask it to get the problem I want solved, that's good enough for me. I'm happy with that.
Yep. What are the differences between learning the hardware side of reality capture versus the software?
I mean, there's a lot. They're very different. I mean, the hardware side, right? You have to. Where do we even start? It's so complex.
Let's go.
You have to understand the different types of devices. So, and this goes all the way back to like, how do you even pick which device? So first of all, I'd start with like, who are you? What's your role? What industry are you in? What kind of projects do you work in? You have to first start there to then pick even what device to get into. And then there's all these complexities around, well, how accurate is that device? What are the workflows you use to capture your goal properly? So if you're an architect, what kind of device captures the as-built conditions of a building you're looking to do? Well, how do I capture the inside and the outside and the roof? How accurate will that data be when it's tied together? What are the different angles I have to think about when I'm in the field to make sure I see the elements I'm looking for? And again, the learning for those right now, there's nobody really teaching you. It is a trial and error process for everybody. Yes, vendors who sell you that scanner do some level of training. It's pretty basic. And then you're taking that device and going to try all these different kinds of buildings, smaller buildings, bigger buildings, multi-story buildings. And most people are just learning the hard way, trialing things, failing at certain projects, data's not working properly, they try to fix it, they do it again, they get better and better and better. That's what many of us, if we've been doing it for 10, 15 years, that's how you became good, is that you failed on so many different project types. Now I know how to approach, finally. Now I know how to approach every type of job.
Eureka.
I can tell you how to do every type of project. But the people that are starting now don't have that benefit. They're starting in the same place we did of like, how do we use this thing? How does it work? And then, I mean, it's the same process then on the software. All these different devices create so much data, so many different types of data. How do you then bring that in and create useful deliverables from it? How do you create drawings if you're looking for survey or civil drawings? Or how do you properly create mechanical models in Revit if you're doing a systems update? Like, it's the learning how to use the data and the different softwares that can help that process is also a very complex process. There's so many different softwares. There's so many different tools. It really is a specialty to know how to use that data properly and create useful information from it. And again, same thing. Nobody's really teaching you how to do it. There's different software available, but you kind of just got to like research them and pick one to try and see if it does, if it work. It's messy.
A whole lot of trial and error.
Yes.
How do you approach your own continuous learning and education?
Well, for non-technical things, audiobooks, YouTube channels, listening to podcasts, finding people that are, this is the one I definitely recommend actually, no matter what you're trying to learn, is find the people who have done the thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And there's obviously so many different areas of that, right? If I'm trying to build a podcast, well, I'm going to go watch other successful podcasts. I'm going to listen and find videos of people talking about how they built different things. I'm going to research the different types of equipment. I'm going to research best practices. So to me, it is dependent on what it is that I want to learn. And I think the amount of information online, I mean, you have an unlimited amount of learning at your fingertips. So I pick what topics I want to continue to learn about and expand in, and I try to just squeeze in a variety of those, whether it's an audiobook around business or it's following a podcast channel or going to other conferences as we're building our events and like continuing to glean from like, what did I enjoy at that event and what did I not really enjoy? And it gives me feedback to then take and say, here's how I want to tweak things in what we produce. So I think continuous learning is critical to growth. But then it's taking that learning and actually doing something with it. Sure. Like an equivalently important thing to learning is action. In fact, I would say action is more important. I would say trying things that you think you should do and putting the effort in and pushing it and seeing how it does is actually more important than going and researching and hoping, finding someone else. Sometimes you want to do something that other people haven't done. So just because you can't find it in your research or learning doesn't mean you shouldn't try it.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people listen to audiobooks or things, but I think a lot of people learn more than they implement.
Okay. Many people may not know you are an avid fisherman. Who taught you how to fish, and what has fishing taught you?
Oh, that's fun. I will say I wouldn't. I know a lot of avid fishermen. I think I'm more of still a hobbyist. I don't go a lot, but I do love it.
Passionate fisherman. How about that?
Yeah, I do. It's great. I started when I was younger. With I think my earliest memories are traveling to Missouri and Montana, where I had grandparents that lived in both of those states. And they were all outdoors people. One had a big fishing pond in their backyard. The other in Montana that was the daily activity, is wake up at 5 a.m., get your coffee, and head to the lake with a boat. So I didn't get to do that a lot, but anytime we went to go visit them, yearly, every couple years, that was a big part of the activities we did.
Yeah.
And that was starting at a young age. So I think that just kind of stuck with me. I still count it as one of my main hobbies. When I get breaks, I also count work as a hobby. So I work a lot more than I fish. But the thing that it's taught me is the importance of unplugging. So to me, during busy seasons, like if I can take an afternoon and go out to the river here in Idaho, and I have no cell service out there, and I'm standing in the river, and I get to just be with my thoughts and nature and the water and just the activity of fishing. It's a nice mental break. I don't have any other things that it's taught me as far as catching fish. I don't have any correlation there, but that is the biggest benefit I see.
A true recharge.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's a life lesson you learned the hard way?
A life lesson I learned the hard way. Man, where do I go with that one? Let's see.
We can certainly circle back.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time putting a pin in that one.
Maybe bookmark that.
I think I don't know, a couple things that come to mind that I don't feel they're good enough to be my answer, but like how important community and family and friends are, I think is one. When we moved out here to Idaho 6 years ago, we left all that behind. So didn't know anybody out here. But we knew a lot about the area. We knew what the lifestyle was going to be like. We really did not enjoy the city we lived in California. So we made the, decision to unplug and relocate and start completely over.
Yeah.
And one, I'd say we're 6 years in, right? We absolutely love it. We don't want to leave. We're fully integrated. We have a good community.
Excellent.
But those first couple years were very difficult. More so for my wife and, the kids and stuff than myself. I think I operate okay in that scenario, and I still, I still talk with people a ton, meetings and business and everything else. But, I think that's one of those decisions where you're like, should we do this? Should we try it? And, yes, we pull the trigger, we try it. It's difficult, but ends up still being a good scenario.
Absolutely.
So I don't think that really is the right answer to that question, but it came to mind.
No, you learned something the hard way. It was a hard time, particularly for your wife. And
yeah,
even if it's better now, it was a point in time where it sounds like the sense of isolation, really, and leaving your existing community. And
yeah. Another lesson learned the hard way is how difficult business is. Yeah. Everybody thinks that it's just a beautiful thing to go ahead and become an entrepreneur. It's popular nowadays. And you'll hear a lot of people, if you go research videos and you listen to successful business owners, there's all kinds of dark days. There's all kinds of difficulty. There's all kinds of you're alone. You have to grind. You got to work hard. You got to travel. You sleepless nights, no money, all of that. That you never are going to understand that until you do it.
What did you most underestimate about it? Something that maybe you paid no mind to at the onset, but once you got going.
I think that it's probably still just the amount of effort it takes to build a successful company. Like when I tell people my schedule and how much time I put in, to me at this point, I've been doing it for so long. I'm like, this is normal. I love it. I want to, everyone else is like, you wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. and go to work? Wow, you're nuts. I'm like, well, that is sometimes what it takes. And most people are not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So I think just the level of effort and also the variety of things that you have to try to become good at, especially when you're in startup phase or you're a smaller company. A lot of people, and there's books about this too, a lot of people that go and start a business, it's because they loved doing a thing. They loved doing a certain thing, and they wanted to just create a business so they could do that thing. They're a baker, so they create a bakery. Or they're a laser scanning expert, and so they create a laser scanning company. Well, there's a lot more to building and running a business than doing the thing that you enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
That becomes very small amount of the work that you have to handle. You have to deal with all the boring stuff too. You have to deal with the, registrations and insurances and liability stuff and building out processes and payrolls and expenses and taxes and finding the clients and dealing with the marketing and building a website and coming up with messaging. And the smaller you are, you handle every aspect of a company. And of course, the ideal scenario is if your plan is to actually build a business, you start putting people in those roles so that they can handle those things and you get to step to bigger picture. But I think that they say 70% of small businesses fail. And I think a lot of it is because it's a lot more work and it takes you away from doing the thing you originally wanted to do or enjoyed doing.
Sure.
Yep. That's another one.
So as we wrap up here, Matthew, curious of your thoughts on how someone can become a better learner.
Ooh.
Advice you would give to learn better.
I think to become a better learner is one, starting with humility and understanding you have the capacity to learn and that you're not the expert. If you just can even have that mindset of like somebody out there knows more than me. Doesn't matter what the subject is. Like every time you step into a room, every time you step into a meeting, every time you step onto a project, like you have to have a certain level of confidence in yourself and what it is that you do. But you also have, I think, to be a better learner, having that mindset of like, what else can I learn? What can I learn from other people? What can I learn from people that maybe are not even necessarily in my exact ideal role and have my expertise, but like, how does an expert in entertainment or gaming, like what do they have that I can learn to implement? So I think it starts with that mindset and humility of wanting to learn and knowing that you can always learn. Yeah. I've said that before, right? As soon as you think that you're done learning, or you think you're the expert, or you think you're wrong, you never will be. There will always be somebody better. There will always be someone with more information who has done more, who has accomplished more. There's always somebody out there. It's your job to find where. Who can you learn from?
And, in industries like this where the technology can change so rapidly.
Yeah.
And landscapes can be altered and people and companies, it's even more imperative.
Yeah. So, and the reason I think that is my starting point is saying like humility, remain teachable as an attitude and a mindset first, is because I do see a lot of people that are in the industry that they also have that kind of competitive mindset and they want to be seen as the person who knows it all. And so there's already walls up where it's like, if you want to try to tell them like, hey, I see you could probably improve by implementing this, they're not receptive. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to listen to it. They don't want to, trial it. Like, so I think there are many people that are more open and teachable, but I do see that in quite a few people too, where it's like, you got to have that wall down and accept, because you never know who that knows how to do the thing that you need to solve.
Yes.
Like it could be the brand new college student that just started in your office and has been playing with the scanner for 4 weeks. They may figure out something faster that you've been hoping to solve for 5 years. Mm-hmm. So that, and even that point goes to, age, how long you've been doing it also doesn't mean you're the best. Like, to me, I think remaining that teachable attitude, but also embracing the next generation, people that are coming in that have a deeper initial skill set with technology. They're going to solve problems faster than we did. They're going to play with multiple things and integrate technologies and AI faster than your current department is going to.
Yeah.
Which I think is another reason that it's important to try to inspire youth to consider these technologies and roles in this industry, because we need them to solve some of the problems that we want to. And ultimately, those are the people that are growing into the roles that will be in charge of those things. So it all connects.
Yeah. Well, let's hope they get learning. Matthew Byrd, thank you so much for talking education and learning.
My pleasure. Always a good time talking with you. And hopefully there's something useful out of this for our community.
Beautiful. Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you.